to the Invisible Cabaret podcast. I'm Ferrera Rochelle.
And I'm Rosie Verbose.
And together we run Invisible Cabaret, a performing arts troupe dedicated to opening up the conversation surrounding mental health.
Join us as we talk to some of the most bodacious burlesque babes, cabaret creatives and inspiring artists about how their creativity and mental health intertwine. Let's pull back the curtain and strip away stigma.
Please note, we at Invisible Cabaret are not mental health professionals. If you're affected by any of the issues raised in this programme, we've made a list of resources for you on our website, www.invisiblecabaret.org/podcast/resources.
It's that time again. Welcome to the Invisible Cabaret podcast. Let us welcome our super guest, who is an actor and charity worker. She also describes herself on her Twitter as a big old queer and a fat activist. Please welcome the lovely performer producer, Lucy Dickson.
Yay!
Hello. Thank you for being here, Lucy. How are you?
I'm very good. If you hear clinking, it's just my gin. So I'll try to minimise the clink.
There's no need to minimise the clink. Celebrate the clink.
Celebrate the clink. We love it. We love to see it.
Some fabulous dungarees as well.
You can't come and talk about, being a queer icon without some dungarees, can you?
Yes!
How else are you supposed to do it?
It's just not valid, is it?
There's
otherwise?
no other way I know.
I did a show a few months ago with a big gaggle of gays, and we accidentally all showed up in dungarees. There was a cast of 10 of us.
Amazing.
10 of us, and every
Were you all in
single
different
one of us.
colours?
Pretty much. There were a couple of matching rainbow ones, which were great, but it was pretty much a rainbow of dungarees.
I am so on board for that.
Yeah,
that sounds
stunning.
amazing.
The real question is, how did you all sit in chairs? That's when it would really sort.
With great
sort you all out.
difficulty.
Yeah. Do you know this trope, Rosh, that this is a general? I think it's especially, I've seen it a lot in the bi community, but I'm fairly sure it's further afield that
bisexual people can't sit in chairs.
That we can't sit in chairs.
What? Why?
We'll always sit in chairs funny. It might be sort of one leg round the arm, or straddling it, or just any way that is not the conventional way to sit on a chair. You can normally spot us by
also, can't drive. Apparently that's another thing. Queers can't drive.
Interesting.
I've heard, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a bad driver, but there was that one time with the pheasant that we won't talk about.
Where your car flipped.
Yeah, a little bit. Little mini baby
that time.
Flip, yeah.
So maybe it is true.
Maybe it is true. We need a bigger sample size. Lucy, hello.
Hello.
So tell us about your theatre exploits. Let's start there.
I've been a little musical theatre queen ever since I could remember. Sort of back at school, I would do the shows each and every year. University, I didn't really do my degree. I'm sure it was the same for both of you. What's a degree? Absolutely not.
Library? Never heard of it.
What is a library? Exactly. Just not a thing. And then once I graduated, I trained in musical theatre. So I did a year of that. After taking a gap year and working in Build-A-Bear workshop, which was an interesting time.
Okay.
Yeah, choices were made.
Right, we may come back to that. We may never speak again. Great.
And then post-training, I set up my own lovely theatre company called Sinqueerly Productions with my wonderful non-binary icon, Meg McGrady, who is the love of my life, my work spouse. They are just absolutely wonderful, and they've taught me so much about how to work with trans performers in a sensitive way, and yeah, they're just absolutely brilliant. But also I was dallying with commercial theatre, going along to auditions and kind of getting really fed up of being told I was too queer, too fat, too this, too that, the other. So I decided that maybe my best way into this industry, rather than going about commercial routes and going about trying to make it happen that way, was to sort of strip things back, go in from the ground up and create places where people like me could survive and thrive, really. So yeah, at the moment, there's rumblings of the West End's big fat queer cabaret, which is going to be great. So it's going to be exclusively for fat queer artists who've been told that, you know, we can't play love interests because who's interested in a fat person? So yeah, but we're gonna change things. So I think I found working in theatre hugely frustrating, but we just got to change it.
Right.
So yeah, that's me.
Amen.
The productions that you have been doing more, I mean, you've done them online recently, haven't you? Your Sinqueerly Me productions. Should we talk a bit about that?
So literally just before the first lockdown, we created a lovely event called Sinqueerly Me at the Other Palace, and we kind of called it it was like a gay jukebox musical. We got queers to come and pick the songs that describe their own personal journey with their queerness. So, you know, I had I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry because I spent so much of my teenage life thinking that I was only kissing girls because it was cute and kinky and the boys liked it, and not because I enjoyed it at all.
Right.
Yeah, you know, like so many of us have been on that journey.
I'm sure that is very relatable.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so it was just a space for lots of queer people to come and share their own stories through the medium of musical theatre and pop. So we were taking a form that has historically left us out and used it to tell our stories. But I think one really important part of that event was that we only had a cast of queer women and trans performers. We had a rule that there weren't allowed to be any cis men in sight, which no issue with them. We loved them. Some of my best friends are cis men. But in theatre, there is actually quite a lot of gay male representation. Still not anywhere near enough. But I think lesbians, especially, bisexual women and trans people are so often reduced to tropes in a way that I think gay men are sort of getting out of. So we wanted to create a space really that was exclusively for them.
Gotcha. And how did it go?
It was great. It was lovely. Sold out. It was the best night ever. And then a week later lockdown hit. So that was perfect timing.
Last hurrah. Oh. So then you moved the production to online.
Yes. So we paired up with another theatre company, MP Theatricals, which focuses mainly on gay male musical theatre, and we produced sort of a 4-event Pride series. So we had one event that was a Sinqueerly Me, so it was just a jukebox musical telling the stories of queer women and trans people. And then we had another event called Queered, where we picked like moments in queer history and musical theatre songs that went along with them, and that was where we had quite a lot of, you know, wonderful gay male representation as well. And then we had a night called Signal, where we paired with Adam Lenson, who is just a wonderful creator and curator of new musical theatre. And we got loads of new queer writers to come and bring some of their new writing. And then we had a panel as well with lots of queer theatre makers. So Ricky Beadle-Blair, who works at Stratford East and created the first ever production that was exclusively trans people of colour. Susie McKenna, who works at the Kiln, and she's married to Sharon D. Clark. Just some really amazing people who have really interesting lives and came to talk to us about their work as theatre practitioners. So that was lovely. And also, I think the main thing about it, though, was that we managed to get, 65 performers involved. So
unbelievable.
That
in a
is
time
amazing.
where all the performers in the world are getting forgotten.
But also, especially where so many queer people had been forced to go back home and had lost that chosen family. It was a time where we could all come together, and, you know, part of the reason there are so many queers in theatre is because chosen family is such a fundamental part of both theatre and queerness. When you're in a cast, you really get that family feeling, and you learn to love each other, and you fight like siblings, but you care about each other so much. And I think chosen family is such an important part of queer identity too. So, yeah, it seemed like the perfect way to bring those things together.
Yeah. I've not put 2 and 2 together there before. That is really interesting.
Neither. And something we've talked about before is, you know, when we're talking to people about what they miss about performing and what they've missed about the theatre experience, the first thing that people say, that most people have said, in fact I'm pretty sure all people have said, is being in a rehearsal room and that feeling of camaraderie. So it's not even though we're all performers because we love to be on stage, it's not the feeling of being stage that is the first thing that's mentioned. It's the being in a room together and sharing an experience and forming that bond. So I can only imagine the sense of the double sense of loss that would
Yeah.
also happen for the queer community.
For sure. And I think another thing is I've always described myself as like a creative extrovert. Like I find it impossible to create alone. Like I love bouncing ideas of other people, and like I'm great at coming up with exciting concepts if I have somebody else to talk to and reflect with. But shut me in a room by myself, I've got no hope. So I think that's another thing about like a rehearsal room, is you get that sense of like creative cohesion. Basically, you can all work with each other to make things better, and that's quite hard when you're creating something from opposite ends of the country. You don't get that quite as much.
Even online, I think it's,
It's just not quite the same, is it?
right, exactly. I think there's been a lot of talk about like, no, it's fine, we'll do it online, because we've all been keeping our hopes up. But there is no replacement for that sort of in-person connection that you get, is there? That just it's you're right, it's just not quite the same. So it's lovely that you've been able to do that throughout lockdown, especially for a Pride series.
It was really lovely, and like I've met some of my best friends through it as well, and I think that's another really lovely thing.
It's pretty safe to say that would have been a highlight of your lockdown. Have you been able to continue this momentum, this creative momentum for the rest of lockdown, or has it, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but has it maybe used up too much emotional energy? Or
Yeah, it's come in peaks and troughs, I think. So I think I'm just about finding my feet again with my creativity. But for a while, I've been sort of working a proper grown-up job, a muggle job, because at the moment it's pretty impossible for anybody to be making enough money to live and eat as a creative. So I've been working for Comic Relief, basically doing fundraising for Red Nose Day. It's been wild, but I'm exhausted. But I think it's really, really difficult to find the emotional capacity to carry on with creativity outside of a full-time job. And I think that's one of the ways that art can be so elitist that people never really talk about or think about. Like, if you have parents who can support you so you don't need to work a full-time job on the side of your creative pursuits, great, then you'll have far more opportunities. But if you have to, work a full-time job to eat, as so many of us do, finding the time and energy for creative pursuits can be really, really difficult. And especially when you have mental health issues or an invisible disability, it sometimes feels almost crippling. Like, it's really frustrating, because I feel like there are so many amazing, productive, creative things I could do if I didn't have to work.
Right.
But it's just the reality for so many of us. And I think it's something that we don't talk about. And it's not only a classist problem within theatre, but it's also an ableist problem. I think,
hello.
Yeah, there are so many people who are capable of working full-time jobs and also being amazingly creative on the side, and I'm very jealous of them, because I don't have that capacity. I spend, I'd say, probably like 50% of my emotional energy just getting through the day. So
Yeah. Oh, preach.
oh, such a vibe.
You are talking about emotional energy as if it's something you quantify. Do you know of spoon theory?
I love spoon theory. It's my
right. So
favourite thing.
can we have a moment for this? Because I use spoon theory so much that I forget that it's not a thing that everybody uses. But
I'm
I
exactly the
found
same.
that-
I'll be like, I don't
right?
have the spoons.
Right, like, what? Exactly. But I've also found that people who don't necessarily have physical stuff that is preventing them from having, peak energy, but mental health stuff as well, spoon theory, talking about energy in terms of spoons, is super useful. How do you describe spoon theory, Lucy? Because I struggle.
I too struggle.
Okay, great. Good,
So
I'm glad
I
I put you on the spot.
Yeah, the way it was described to me is that everybody wakes up in the morning with, for example, 40 spoons, right? And every single time you have to expend emotional energy, whether that's through, brushing your teeth or comforting a friend or doing your work or, calling your mum. All of those things can be lovely, but they can take up an emotional toll on people. And when you have a mental health problem, it's like you just wake up in the morning with fewer of those spoons. So when you have a mental health problem or an invisible disability, often there are some of those things that take up your emotional energy that you just won't have capacity for, because you don't physically have enough spoons. You don't have the emotional energy to pay for it.
Yeah. And then sometimes you have to ration your spoons, don't you? So if you wake up on a day and actually you only have 10 spoons and you know you've got to go to that meeting and you know that you should probably get showered and get dressed and you know you've probably got to heat up that lunch that, you know, is healthy and good for you, and you also know that you've got to call your dad, suddenly that's 4 spoons gone, and then you've got only 6 for the rest of the day, but they can be used up anywhere. So you have to plan your day around your spoons.
Yeah, but I think I also find it a really helpful thing when talking to people about boundaries, though. Like, I've always really, really struggled with setting emotional boundaries with people because I care so deeply about all of my friends and my family. Yeah. If somebody comes to me in need, I'm really bad at saying, I love you, but I can't actually deal with that right now.
Oh, it's hard.
Because I worry that I'm going to offend them or make them think I don't care about them. But now that I have this, I can just go, I love you, I don't have the spoons for that today. People tend to understand that better and understand that it isn't a personal thing. It's like, I love you, but I don't physically have capacity for that today. I can't deal with it. And it's a really, really helpful way to set boundaries for me, I think.
I think part of it as well is because it's language that we've not made up, right? It's like, I mean, if somebody made it up, in fact, I've just checked, it was Christine Miserandino, whose name I hope I'm saying right. She wrote an essay in 2003 called The Spoon Theory, which is where it comes from. So go look it up if you're interested. It will be in the show notes at the bottom. But yeah, so we've got this whole language that other people are using so much that people identify themselves as spoonies, if that's the way they think about things. And I don't know, there's something legitimizing about having that language already there. Do you know what I mean? Do you feel like that as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I also think it's just an easy way to explain that reduced capacity, I think. I think a lot of people who have, you know, fully functioning mental health, not that anyone really does, but, you know, a lot of people who wouldn't consider themselves spoonies or to have any sort of real mental disability or whatever, they don't realise quite how debilitating these things can be, and the way that when you are having a bad day, things like getting out of bed, things like brushing your teeth or making a sandwich can take everything out of you.
Yeah. Can I blow your mind a second, Lucy?
Hit me with it.
Have you heard about forks?
Shut up. What's a fork?
Right, wait. So I've heard people talk about specifically mental health and self-care activities by using the term forks. Whereas, so when you've got a spoon and you've got an activity that takes a certain amount of spoons, once those spoons are gone, you can't get them back. So they've then extrapolated and made up a different system of forks, which can add to spoons, make a full cutlery drawer. The activities that take forks can be replenished. So, for example, if you take the self-care action of brushing your teeth might take 5 forks, but you get 7 forks back. So you end up with less forks than you started with, but still not as many lost as you might do if it was spoons. It doesn't work for everybody.
That's too mathematical for my wee little
fair. Keep with the spoons.
Creative mind.
Your cutlery drawer is your own, you know what I'm saying? I just wanted you to know that was an option.
There is an option.
Right.
Forks exist.
Forks exist. If you want to use them, it's up to you. You know, we're talking about having a language and label and things to hang your hat on. Am I right in saying that you have recently got a mental health diagnosis yourself, Lucy, and can we talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, of course. So I was diagnosed probably about a year and a half ago now. Most of it's been in lockdown, but with BPD, or borderline personality disorder. But it also goes by a myriad of other names. You've got emotionally unstable personality disorder, which is what they technically call it in the UK now. Yeah. And there's a group of American psychiatrists who are trying to get it renamed emotion regulation disorder.
Okay.
Which I think speaks the best to my experience.
Right.
But yes, that's what I have. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but it's a right roller coaster.
Yes. Right. Can you what's it like from where you're sitting, Lucy? How have you experienced it? How has it affected you?
So I would say calling it emotion regulation disorder really it really does justice to what it is. It basically means I feel the same emotions as any other normal human being, but I kind of lack the ability to temper them. Like when I'm happy, I'm ecstatic. When I'm miserable, I'm miserable. And it means it can often actually quite often get misdiagnosed as bipolar, but these switches tend to happen far quicker, and they also tend to be brought about by feelings of abandonment or loneliness, and those are things that I find really, really difficult to deal with. So yeah, it's like I feel the same things as everyone else, but you know, if I have a fight with my girlfriend about you know, using the wrong toothbrush, some people might get slightly miffed, go and make a cup of tea, and then come back. I will curl up in a corner and cry about the fact that I'm a terrible person and I didn't deserve to be loved in the first place.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
That's exhausting.
It's a lot, yeah. And I think that's what it is. It is just exhausting. Like, there will be days where the tiniest thing can just set me on a full emotional tailspin. And I think the hardest thing about it is that once I get myself in that dark emotional place, it is just impossible to claw yourself out.
Right.
That being said, there are benefits to it, or, you know, not necessarily benefits, but I think like that intensity means I'm a really loyal friend. I care about people so deeply. I love deeply. I'm passionate. I'm a creative, and I think that probably partly comes from the fact that I feel things so deeply. And also, like, I'm an activist. I care hugely about, you know, important issues and changing the world, and I think that probably has its roots in caring a little bit too much about pretty much everything.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of BPD in a nutshell. It's exhausting and a roller coaster, but it's me. So yeah.
A very important question I feel we need to ask is, have you watched Crazy Ex-Girlfriend?
The best television show of all time.
Okay.
I knew it. I knew Lucy would have done.
I actually started watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend before I got my diagnosis. And I remember watching it and being like, this very highly functioning, intelligent, cool, creative woman who is deeply unhinged really reminds me of me. And I just couldn't work it out. And then, you know, about 3 series in, she gets diagnosed with BPD, and I was like, oh, that's fascinating. Should probably look into that. And lo and behold, a year later, there I was with a diagnosis. So
Singing the diagnosis song. I can know. There it is.
Yes, that's the one.
Yes. Oh, so good. So
Yeah, it would have been a travesty if you hadn't seen it. We, at Invisible Cabaret, in fact, our core tenets, I'd say, is loving the show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I love it. I think the other thing about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is I'd never seen representation of a woman with mental health issues who was also so highly capable. I think so often there's this belief that, like, if you have a mental health issue or if you have a disability, that there are things you can't do. And obviously there are going to be, you know, days where you're not capable of as much as everybody else. But I think it took me a long time to almost come to terms with the fact that I deserved a diagnosis, because I was like, but I functioned so well. And in reality, I didn't. I was losing friends. I had a really hard time, like, forging relationships with people, but I was doing really well at work. I was intelligent. I was doing well at university. Like, and I think, yeah, there was something really liberating about seeing a woman who was highly successful, but also quite clearly had a serious mental health condition.
Right.
it's really interesting to hear you talk like this about a diagnosis such as BPD, because we all know that BPD is very highly stigmatized, isn't it?
It's honestly the worst. My mum is a doctor, and she worked as a psychiatrist for a long time. And when I first told her about my diagnosis, she was like, no, you don't, because that's the thing they diagnose people with when they know they're beyond help. And I was like, great, thank you, Mum.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm sure that's partly because she, was training as a doctor in the 80s when it wasn't really understood.
Right.
I have a whole other realm of thoughts about this, about why it was so poorly understood. It's an issue that primarily affects women. I think it's something like 75% of cases are in women. And I think there's almost definitely a correlation between A, the intense stigma, but B, how long it took to find effective treatments for it. And I think it's because it was an issue that was primarily affecting women that the health system just didn't care to do anything about it. Even now, there are still doctors who won't treat people with BPD. I read an article the other day aimed at psychiatrists, and it said you're only ever one borderline away from losing your license. Like, somebody with this disorder will come in, absolutely ruin your practice, like forge a personal connection with you and then ruin you. Like, there's this belief that people with BPD are like fundamentally manipulative, terrible people. And it's really difficult because I know it's a nightmare.
That is shocking.
There's also a great website called How to Train Your Borderline, which is for men with partners with borderline.
No.
Yeah, like How to Train Your Dragon, but for borderlines.
I hate that with every cell in my body.
Yeah, it's difficult, and I don't understand it, but at the same time, I know that because of my emotional intensity, there have been times where I have acted in really, really destructive ways, but that doesn't mean that anybody with this condition should be beyond help or should be treated like that. And I think there's often a tendency in people who are slightly more high functioning with something like BPD to almost see themselves as the good borderlines. Like, I am a borderline, but I'm a good one. You know, I'm not one of the bad ones who goes around hurting people or doing terrible things. And I hate that. Yeah. Because I know there is a world where if I hadn't received help, I probably could have found myself in a really dark place where that emotional intensity could have led me to dangerous or damaging behaviours.
Right.
But yeah, like, even down to the presentation of borderlines in film, like, I think if you Google like famous borderlines, something like 70% of them are murderers. Like,
cool, nice.
Yeah. If you talk about borderlines, people automatically go, "Oh, cruel intentions. That's borderline personality disorder." Oh, like, it's like people who murder, women who murder out of jealousy, are pretty much always either written or coded as having borderline personality disorder.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, combine that with like queer coding and the stuff that goes on there and just general misogyny, like, there's a lot happening here.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's a whole theory about when doctors used to diagnose women with hysteria, probably that's what would nowadays be called BPD. BPD is modern day hysteria. It's crazy woman disorder.
Oh, man alive.
Well, when there lies the crazy ex-girlfriend title, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Another trope.
If you don't mind me asking, what is the treatment that you have found so helpful?
So, I feel like the first thing I need to say is that it took me a very long time to get treatment. I was on a waiting list for a very long time because it is still something that is grossly underfunded. I was told by one of my doctors that they couldn't treat me unless I'd been hospitalised by a suicide attempt.
Oh, good.
That's the level of like how few doctors there are that are trained in this. They're like, unless you are on the absolute edge, we can't help you.
And please do tell your patients that, won't you?
Yeah, really helpful. So, you know, there were days where I was like, maybe I should just, you know, hurt myself enough that I can actually get some help. Like,
of course, that's where your brain would take you. How irresponsible.
It was just absolutely awful.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, but I just don't want to say it's all sunshine and daisies and I got help straight away, because that's not how it works. And yeah, so the treatment for it is either MBT, which is called mentalization-based therapy, or DBT, which is dialectical behaviour therapy. So I have a lovely integrative therapy which combines aspects of both of those. And it's basically just a really, really intense therapy session with loads of homework, which for me, like a high-functioning woman, is great because I'm like, extra homework, get to like go home, type out worksheets, think about, you know, it really, really forces you to dissect your emotions, why you feel things the way you do. It's all about when you're feeling things that emotionally, it's distress tolerance, so how to calm yourself down enough that you can think rationally. And then it also trains you to, once you're in that space, to think rationally. They call it mentalising, to mentalise about why you're feeling that way and how you can deal with it.
Okay. Sounds similar to a lot of what I know about CBT.
Yeah, CBT can help because BPD often shows up with lots of symptoms of depression and anxiety. But for me, it didn't help. And I think that's because I found it really frustrating, because I was like, I understand why I'm feeling what I'm feeling, but when I'm in the moment, I can't take that step back and I can't get myself out of that space. And I think the thing about DBT that's really, really helped me is the focus on distress tolerance, the focus on saying you are going to be feeling awful and that's okay, because that's part of the condition you have. But what you need to do is you need to learn how to get yourself out of that space so that you can deal with the emotion.
That sounds really helpful.
It's great, but it's hard.
It feels
exhausting. I come out of therapy
Yeah.
sessions like I need a nap and a cup of tea.
Yeah, for sure.
Had a therapy session today, which might be why I'm on a gin.
Okay.
Gin, maybe.
Not that you needed an excuse, but I totally, or a reason. But
100%.
I get it. What's it like on Zoom? Like, presumably that's how you're doing them, right?
Really
yeah.
weird. Zoom therapy is intense.
Yeah.
But yes, I've got a lovely gay Italian man. He's very nice. But yeah, I also think I find it quite helpful, because one of the things that I've historically really struggled with is setting boundaries. And I think actually having that physical barrier for me is really good, to be like, I'm here, my therapist is there is this physical space between us.
Yeah.
And it means that I think previously with therapists, I've always worried too much about them liking me, which is a big side effect of the BPD. Like, you're desperate for people to like you and love you and care about you. And if they don't, you go into full meltdown. Right. So I think that's partly why my experiences with therapists in the past haven't worked, because I've cared about them liking me too much to be open about my emotions and my experiences. But having that physical barrier and being able to have that boundary in place, this is a doctor-patient relationship. It's not your job to like me, it's your job to help me.
I'm just so in awe, Lucy. Like, it seems like you've done lots and lots of really hard work on yourself, and that you're in a really good place, and you've owned it, that it's not always sunshine and daisies, and it is really
it's
hard.
really hard work. Like, I hate this narrative that like self-care is all, bath bombs and
oh my god,
hot chocolates. Like, sometimes it is 100%.
Yeah.
But actually sometimes self-care is saying, I'm not going to go out and drink with my friends tonight, because I know if I do, I'm not going to be able to take care of my emotions tomorrow.
Hello.
Or, sometimes self-care is actually making the hard choice, or self-care is going to therapy when really there is nothing you want to do less. Or having difficult conversations with your partner about boundaries. Like, those things are not always pleasant to do. And I think there's this almost like fetishization of self-care, where it's this lovely, cool, trendy thing to do. But like, it's not always easy. Taking care of yourself can be really difficult.
Right up there with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, this is another of our core tenets, is the difference between self-care and self-soothing, that then they're not the same thing. And self-soothing is a lot sexier to sell people, but actually it's the hard stuff, it's the boring stuff. Are you familiar with that? There's an Instagram account which is at Make Daisy Chains, I think.
No, I haven't seen it.
And they do a series called Boring Self-Care.
Self-care is so dull, literally.
Right?
Like, the everyday reality of being a person with mental health problems is like exhausting and dull, but like, you get used to it. But that's another thing, those things take spoons as well. Even self-care takes spoons. Some days you're like, well, I actually need to focus on, sitting down and doing my therapy workbook, but that means I probably won't have the emotional energy to go out to the pub.
Yeah.
Which can suck.
When you'd much rather go to the pub, and you know that going to the pub and getting really drunk and hanging out with friends or partners or whatever also brings you joy and makes you feel
and it brings
good,
you the short-term joy.
Yeah.
And then it's not great. it's not an ideal situation the next morning when you realise you still have lots of therapy worksheets to do and you're hungover.
Not a good mix.
Anxiety is something I always get.
Anxiety? I've never heard this
with
word
anxiety. Before. Every single time I get drunk, the first thing I do when I wake up is go, what did I say?
What have I done?
What did I do?
Oh.
What did I do? What did I say? You have to like try and...
I just get really sad. I'm such a sad hangover girl. And I think that's another thing people don't talk about enough. Like, mental health, like alcohol and smoking and that sort of stuff. Like, I hate when people say, oh, you've got mental health problems, you just need to eat better and drink less. Like, that pisses me off to no end. But I have learned that when I am feeling low, if I drink on top of that, even if it makes me feel better in the moment, the next day I will be miserable. And there's nothing that can get me out of that space.
And so there's the camp of all you need to do is eat better and drink less alcohol.
Which is just stupid and frustrating.
Or the other camp of all you need to do is just have a glass of wine and relax.
Yeah.
Just relax, have a glass of wine. And, I am definitely an advocate of if I'm feeling tightly wound, maybe a little glass of red or a little gin just to take the edge off will make me feel good. But very quickly, that one glass can lead to 2, to 3, to 4. And then before you know,
Anxiety.
Yeah. Anxiety galore. Yeah, exactly.
It's a thing.
People just don't appreciate, like, how much thought having a mental health problem takes. You have to be like, okay, so I could do this thing tonight, but if I do this thing, here are the potential 12 extra effects that it might have on me tomorrow.
Yeah, everything needs a bloody flowchart.
Yeah, but people who, like, don't experience mental health like we do, like, just have no, like, it doesn't faze them. They don't even think about that.
Can you imagine?
Must be so nice.
Can you imagine what that must be like?
I literally think, I talk about this all the time. I'm like, if I didn't have to, spend this much time looking after myself, going to therapy, going to Sainsbury's to pick up my antidepressants, I would be the most productive person in the history of the world.
That way, yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day because I'm really into yoga at the moment. I've been doing it every day for like a month, but I'm also very into like the power of the breath, and like the thing that brings me down is just being able to count my breaths and to like big deep breaths, and like really that regulates me, which should come as no surprise really. But I was thinking about it the other day. I was feeling really anxious and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do lots of breaths. I'm going to calm down and then I'm going to be fine. And then at one point during the breaths, I just let my mind wander to, some people just breathe.
Like, some people just do it. That must be really nice, mustn't it?
Can you imagine how nice that would be?
What's that like? What's that
and
like
they don't
for
get
you?
anxious. Like, they're just breathing because they're needing to be alive, not because they're trying to calm down.
What a different world it would be.
I know. This has been so wonderful and so inspiring and so enlightening. Before we go, we always do our grateful section, our gratitude section. So it's time to get grateful and say what we're grateful for this week. Can be big or small, silly or serious. So Rosie V, do you want to go first?
Yes, certainly. This week I am grateful for many things, but I'm going to choose one that I don't think I've said before and I can't believe it. It's a bit mushy, but I'm going to do it. And that is, I'm really, really grateful for my mum, who I live with at the moment, and I also live with my dad. I'm grateful for him too, but it's not about you, Dad. It's about Mum today.
Oh.
So I'm particularly grateful for Mum because she has been, like, she just, no matter, I've got all these like chronic things going on, and no matter how exhausted I feel, when she sees my exhaustion, I know she feels exhausted as well, but she always seems to find some pocket to pull more energy from to lift me out of it, or to... like she's got into making broth recently, which is gross and another thing, but it's supposed to be very helpful for one of the issues that I'm dealing with at the moment. So she's been like, right, we're going to get into it. We're going to do it. She spent hours, researching these things, and she keeps going when I don't know how I'm going to keep going. And I'm so grateful for her and that. So that's my
Yay, Queen Pam!
That's my gratitude
Queen
for this
Pam,
week.
that's lovely.
And she's very happy because the daffodils are coming out now, and that's just the joy it brings her is bringing me joy vicariously.
Aw, that's lovely.
Yeah.
What a good gratitude for the week. Lucy, what are you grateful for this week?
I'm going to say my family, because that can cover everything.
Okay.
Like, I'm grateful for my family, my parents and my wonderful sisters, even though they forced me to do far too many family Zooms. How many family Zooms does one person need, honestly? But no, love them to bits, very grateful. Like my queer family, the people who teach me each and every day, my wonderful partner, because she found my cabaret name for me the other day, and it's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Are you ready? You ready for
Yes,
this?
Yeah.
please.
Pamo chocolat.
Oh, nice.
Is that not the most stunning thing you've ever heard?
That's pretty cool.
It's
That
a
is
pun.
excellent.
It's food related. It's just everything. So very grateful for her, especially today. And my cat, because he's also my family.
Tell us about
And he's just the cutest.
Talk to us
fluffiest-
about your cat.
Oh my gosh, my cat is the best thing to ever happen to me in my life. No offence to my lovely girlfriend. But he's so cute. He's a rescue, but he's got a bit of a dodgy leg, so he falls over his own feet all the time. And he's called Bertie, and I just spent £30 on 6 bow ties for him.
Bertie needs his bow ties.
I've got him a
surprised.
proper silk one that we're saving for a special occasion. That's his formal wear. He's got his smart casual. He's got his formal bow tie. We've already got him one for Pride. He's ready to go.
Amazing.
gosh, so sweet.
Yeah. So my family, but exclusive, like especially my cat.
Especially Bertie.
Especially Bertie. Shout out Bertie.
God bless Bertie.
That's lovely. Rochelle, what about you? What are you grateful for this week?
I'm grateful this week for the songs of Victoria Wood.
Oh, yes.
I love her.
I recently, I don't know what, I can't explain it. I feel like I fell in a YouTube hole, and all of a sudden I was watching her play. We keep saying the word Pam. That's so weird. We're talking about your mum, Pam.
Right.
You just said Pam and Chocolat.
Right.
And the Victoria Wood song Pam is the one that I've been
My
like
name
playing
is
on
Pamela, they
repeat.
call me Pam. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know
that
what you
one.
mean.
Yeah.
Is Pam coming for us today?
I don't know.
Oh.
The universe. Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, all three of us are grateful for Pam. That's
We're
just
all
so
grateful
weird.
for Pam.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, that's beside the point. Yeah, so I started watching that one and I was like, oh, I love this song. And I remembered that at some point I tried to teach myself how to play it on the ukulele.
Oh.
And then I was like, but why just stop at Pam? Why not try to teach yourself about the Barry and Frida, Let's Do It, the 7-minute classic.
Absolutely.
So I was like, I'm just going to watch it just to like get in the
what
zone.
happens, see where we go.
I ended up watching like 4 versions of it over and over, and then I've taught myself how to play it on the ukulele. I am so proud of myself.
My parents once went to a fancy dress party dressed as Barry and Frida, and
Oh
it was
my
the
gosh.
best thing I've ever seen. She literally had like a copy of the Woman's Weekly. Like it was stunning.
Amazing.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I had a little bit of help from Matt because there was some really like tricky bits, and Matt's very musically minded,
Yeah.
where I am not. And so yeah, there's a couple of bits that he helped me with, and then I was playing it over and over again last night and ended up really hurting my fingers. So I was like, well, I'll stop now. And then I picked it up again today, and I just did it from memory, and I was so proud of myself. The only thing I haven't got down is all of the key changes.
I was
there's
going to
so
say, there was
many.
like 18 key changes.
Yeah, there's like 5. I've managed to get one, and it's where it like goes up a step, and I was like so proud of myself that I managed to figure that out. And so I feel like I might just stick with one, just that be it.
Yeah.
It's very rusty at the moment, but at some point I'm thinking I might try and get it recorded and send it out there into the ether. But yes, that's what I'm grateful for.
Oh, God
The
bless
musical
Victoria
genius
Wood.
of Victoria Wood.
We're all grateful
Rest
for
in
Pam.
peace.
Lucy, speaking of Pamo Chocolat, what is next for Pamo Chocolat? What is next for you? What's on the horizon? Have you got anything you'd like to direct our listeners towards?
I mean, at the moment, We're in very early days, but I'm looking to create this incredible big fat West End cabaret. So please keep your eyes peeled for that, which will be very exciting. And also I'm sort of, tentatively dipping my toe in the cabaret pond. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But I think the lovely Pam au chocolat, may be coming to a stage near you.
That's exciting.
Where can we keep our eyes peeled? Where do the peeled eyes go?
So if you head to all of my social media pages, which are all Lucy Says Smile, because I'm a loser. Want people to smile. So yeah, at Lucy Says Smile. If you want to follow my lovely queer production company, you can follow us at Queerly Prod on Twitter and Instagram as well. And they're the best. We love them all.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for joining us. It has been such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
A joy.
And thank you very much to our listeners for joining us once again. It's been a pleasure to be speaking to you all, as always. You can hear from us in 2 weeks' time with another fantastic guest. Until then, you can find us on all the socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what are the other ones? YouTube. Thank you. And YouTube. Also, our website, invisiblecabaret.org. There's some new fun things on our blog that Rosie Verbose has been working very hard on, so do be sure to check that out. Thank you once again. Be kind to yourselves, and we will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Be kind to yourselves. Bye.
This has been the Invisible Cabaret podcast. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please reach out to us on one of our many socials. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search Invisible Cabaret. We'd also be grateful if you could rate and review the podcast and share it with a friend so we can continue stripping away stigma together.